So the social sciences are notorious for um, being much more divided and not really having a cohesive set of like principles or like formulas or whatever, at least in comparison to the physical, I guess you could call physical sciences, such as, well, math isn't really a science, but math, physics, chemistry, those are much more, I guess, cohesive than the social sciences. There aren't as many like disagreements or controversies. Not as many. There are still controversies, but even then, these controversies are still more localized to the, researchers who are at the cutting edge, the intellectuals of the fields, rather than being known by like the common person. Whereas, well, controversies in social sciences do naturally affect the average person, but that's besides the point. Social sciences just don't have really, again, a unified set of principles. There's no really, like, if you study history, or even not study history, or study it to the degree of a PhD, you're not gonna hear about, I guess, like laws of history or whatever. That's more in pop history, and anyone who has ever tried to really formulate like a laws of history, right? Like you could look at Marx, you could look at Guns, Germs, and Steel. You can look at other attempts to do so as well. These all have criticisms, and one of the reasons why the social sciences are so divided is that you can't really replicate, I guess, like test cases, or, for example, in like the physical sciences and chemistry, you can isolate things in a lab and test it out there and record, and have all of these measuring devices and record that. But with something like history, you can't repeat history, and you can't really force it. I guess for something like economics, you can do like an experiment where a small community receives like a cash injection. But again, economics experiments are quite limited, and when you're looking at broader economics, such as like the economy of a large country such as India, or even just looking at an industry with some level of complications or complexities in manufacturing, which is basically all industries these days. Even something like agriculture participates a lot in like global shipping, and there's a lot of machinery and use of telecommunications. Yeah, it's all really complex. Even, I guess, maybe psychology. You can ask the, and it's generally just asking, really surveying people about how they're doing, or specific questions, which again isn't that robust, I guess, of a research method. So the social sciences, you can't just replicate things. You can't make a unified like law of history, because you can't repeat history. So what's already there has to be debated about constantly. Like every like, I guess, fiction book ever has had like debates over, what did the author mean by this. History is basically the same. It's, when a book is written, you can't change it. Especially, and you can't really learn more about it if, like, the author is dead, or if they forgot really the writing process, or have changed since then, right? History, there is no author really, I guess, other than the historians, but I'm talking about more the actual events, which again, we are not certain of, because historians, like all humans, have biases. So yeah. Additionally, the social sciences, as touched upon earlier, are politically and socially and economically impactful, right? Impactful in a lot of different ways. This always makes it so that their controversies are magnified. People debate all the time about, morality, why do people go to war? What do humans like really want? What's the secret to happiness? And even about, I dislike to bring stuff like this up, but even about LGBT and the entire idea of gender, and yeah, a lot of things are, a lot of controversies within the social sciences bleed out into the general public, out of the sphere. I guess you could say the intellectuals, if that term is appropriate. And additionally, this importance means that the social sciences are interfered with. They were especially interfered with in the past, and in many, well, at least to some extent in all places, I guess. But in some places, it's especially apparent that they are interfered with by government entities. Um, in the past, historians had to rely exclusively on patronage by governing figures, and so always depicted them in a good light and the enemies in a bad light. So it's confusing when you compare, maybe a Polish historical account or a Russian historical account, since the people who wrote both of those things would have been patronized by, Poland, Lithuania, and the Grand Duchy of Muscovy, and so would naturally have conflicting accounts and biases. And yeah, but at least with the internet, with the rise of the internet, these state-led, I guess, interventions, narratives have become increasingly countered and critiqued, which I think is a good thing. But it does mean that the social sciences just have, I guess, a lot of baggage. Like even this regular study of economics, psychology, philosophy, sociology, those all bring up big questions that can have difficult answers that could literally change societies. So those are, of course, often controversial. Research can be controversial. Even the mere suggestion of investigation can be controversial, and people can even reject well-founded arguments for their simple biases. Whereas, the hard sciences, physical sciences, the biggest controversy they really have, I guess, is evolution. I can't. There's nothing else that really compares to the debate about evolution, whether it's real or not. I guess maybe you could include quantum mechanics, or trying to combine Einstein's theory with theory of physics or model of physics with the classical model. But again, these are generally quite localized to people who have an interest in physics and are researching physics. Doesn't really bleed out to the public, with, I guess, the exception of evolution. Yeah. And additionally, the social sciences are extremely complex. Humans are really complex. And just the human body is not even understood. How the brain functions is not understood. And the link between, the brain and the mind has a lot of guesswork, and that has not been empirically documented. We can't explain how the consciousness is formed, as far as I know, as someone who mainly does history and philosophy, and even something like linguistics, which is on the border between a hard science, since it has so much math, and it's based on sentences that are more verifiable, so you can't actually kind of test in linguistics. Although there are, for example, it's difficult to test theories are there basics to a language that all human language has. That's a big debate in linguistics, but again, localized mainly to people who like linguistics. Yeah, but even something like linguistics is really complicated. Even as regular sentence has cognate, has influences from society, social dimensions. The context is used. Right, pragmatics, phonetics, right, accent and stuff, and so on and so forth. Even language alone, which is a very regular element of people's lives, and it's much easier to test than something that history or sociology or economics. Even there's so much analysis and so much debate due to the incredible complexity of human thought and emotion, and the fact that language is trying to carry all the baggage of a human being in these discrete signals. Even that is extremely complex and highly debated. So to summarize, the social sciences are so divisive and often challenging to formulate schools of thought, and have such great controversies within them. And it's because one, you can't really test social sciences, or at least not as easily as the hard sciences. You can't really replicate things. Two, the social sciences are really impactful. They impact everyone in at least obvious ways, and everyone has really like an incentives to interfere with the social sciences. And so governments have done so, but also you could say the intellectuals participating in the field themselves, the wealthy, the even regular politicians. And so the social sciences have a lot of bias that has been interfering with them, or maybe that bias is valid in some ways, but it's one of the reasons why it's so complicated. And number three, the social sciences are just extremely complex. Humans are complex. It's easier to understand why a feather falls at the rate that it does than to explain human, just even basic human interaction, where there was tons and tons of academic literature on, even sociology, psychology, linguistics. Like it branches across all of these fields. Even something like waving hello can go into semiotics and further. So yeah, I hope this video was informative and insightful.